Hello everyone and welcome to another video from the Tiny Menagerie. I love cheap, small, schooling fish. There you go, I said it. People can keep their fancy angels and cichlids and their discuses. My heart will always be with the little guys. And to that effect then, for the past few months I have been working with my pearl danios to see if I can improve the strain. As, while I think they are already smashing little fish, who are just so entertaining and peaceful, they could certainly use some improvement. Like a lot of common small fish, mass breeding has not done the pearl danio any favours, and they can be rather dull, lacking any real coloration or shine, and they are very prone to being disfigured from constant inbreeding. And, as they are virtually never seen as wild fish in the hobby anymore, in all honesty, I don't really know what they're supposed to look like. They might originally have looked completely different from this. And so, I'm just going to see what I can do in order to make mine better. And here we are though. This is my first breeding group, and if you've seen my other videos on this channel, you will likely recognise these from the All About Pearl Danios video. And of these 6 little fish, this female is my best. She has got a good shape, with no obvious distortions or disfigurement. She's got a nice bit of pinky blush around her belly that I really like, and would like to increase if I possibly can. She's also got some evidence of colour in both the dorsal and anal fins, although not very much. She's got a teeny little bit of colour in her tail, but the black band on her sides is very poor, barely showing at all. Overall though, she is at least a nice healthy little fish. And to her counterpart, this is the best male. He is much more colourful than the female already, and in particular showing some nice coloration with oranges and purples around the anal fin, with a clear distinction between yellow, black and orange bands on the fin itself. Unfortunately, he has got the most pathetic colour I have ever seen around the dorsal fin, so that's certainly nothing of note. The same with his tail, that only has the barest hint of orange in it. But he does have a good pinky hue down his flanks, and the black band on his lateral line is very weak, but it is at least nice and clean, unlike on the female, where it is very weak and also not particularly clean neither. Overall, at least, he is a nice healthy little fish. Given that then, as both male and females have some potential to have good colour showing on them, especially in the anal and dorsal fins, then that's definitely something I'd like to work on, see if I can get that looking a little bit stronger. This goes the same as well with the overall pearlescence on the fish. Neither of them are lacking in pearlescence, but again, if I can breed them to have more of that, a little bit more purple or blue, that would be very nice. And so though ultimately, I decided to breed these two and raise up their fry, just to see what kind of offspring they would produce at this point. Now, annoyingly, they did actually breed in their holding tank while I was setting up the actual breeding tank. And as this bunch of little fry showed up and they grew up to be reasonable little fish, well, it seemed like a bit of a waste to go through it all again, so I just decided to raise these ones and keep them on as the first batch. Does mean things were a little bit more difficult keeping them all fed. This tank was a bit too big for them, but they've not done too badly. The important thing though is here we are, 2 months later, when they have pretty much fully grown and, well, in all honesty, extremely unhappy being in this 25-litre tank. But I have put them in here for good reason. And that's so that at this point I can get a good look at them and see where this first breeding has left me. And it's at this point now that I'm going to screen them to get out the 10 best possible fish from this group. In particular, the first thing I am screening for is shape. Every fish needs to be as perfect as possible in terms of health. I want no deformities, no spinal issues, nothing like that. The ultimate aim of this is to get prettier fish, not uglier ones. And in my eyes, danios should be slimline. They should look like they are fast and nimble. They should have an almost eel-like quality to them. And that includes the females, who can look extremely ungainly, no doubt because over the years now they have been kept purely to produce as many eggs as they can, because that's going to give the breeders as much profit as they possibly can. And so females have taken a bit of a hit, and they can be rather blob-like, to be frank about it. And I don't want that. I want my strain of pearl danios to be slinky and colourful. At least though, this is a relatively simple step. It is just a case of looking very closely at each fish and removing any that don't have that perfect shape. Next then, I want to screen them for pearlescence, literally check how shiny each and every one of them is. After all, as their name suggests, can a non-reflective fish really be called a pearlescent danio? No, I don't think so. But this is a little bit more challenging, and what I have found to be the easiest method is to turn off all the lights, then slowly, very slowly so that you don't spook the fish, shine a torch into the tank at an angle so that it reflects off the danio's sides. This makes it much easier to see which are the most shiny, bearing in mind of course that males should have pearlescence covering right the way from tail to gill plates, whereas the females, the pearlescence tends to be concentrated around their tails, less so over the belly, so you don't want to be accidentally screening out all of the females and ending up with a breeding group consisting only of males. Not much use there. Although, of course, any females that show more pearlescence that covers more of the body will immediately get extra breeding brownie points because that's one of the key features I want to improve as well. Luckily for me though, most of them are looking pretty good. There are a few in there who are a bit lackluster. The pearlescence is very much concentrated just around the lateral line, doesn't really go up towards the dorsal area at all, and those ones can be screened away. The vast majority, though, are absolutely fine, with just a couple of standout examples. And the last feature to screen them for at this point is going to be fin coloration, particularly the anal and dorsal fins at this point, which is essentially going to involve netting each of the fish, bringing them to the front of the glass so that I can see them closely, and then picking out which of the remaining 10 have the very best fin coloration that I can see. Now, unfortunately, looking through them, dorsal coloration is still very poor in the group. Very few of them are showing any colour in the dorsal fins at all. And so again, brownie breeding points are being awarded to any fish showing any dorsal coloration. But because so many of them are so poor, I am looking mostly for coloration in the anal fin. Needs to have a black line, some of them don't have that. The males need to have good orange coloration both above and below the black line. Females need to have orange above and yellow below it. And then those 10 fish who are the best can be separated away and they'll be allowed to grow on for a little bit longer while everyone else is going to go to the fish shop. And so, here we are now, about 3 weeks later. They've had time to grow up a little bit more, and a couple of the less desirable fish have been removed from the group. I did have slightly more than 10 of them because there were a few I wasn't too sure about. Now I have the 9 best fish as possible from the breeding group. Of these, there are 2 standout examples, same as there were with their parents. And this is definitely my best female. Look at the coloration she has got in that dorsal fin. Yeah, I know, it's not impressive, but for this group, it actually kind of is. She is definitely the best in terms of her coloration. Shape-wise, she's okay. She's not too bad, she's a little bit plump around the base, she's not exactly the prettiest of fish, but she does also show some quite nice pearlescence too. This little female, on the other hand, is what I'm classing as the second best fish, mostly because she is a much nicer shape. I've actually not really seen them show this kind of shape before. She's quite pointy around the snout, but I kind of like that. There's a little bit of perch in there somewhere. She also has good coloration around her fins. In fact, she's got slightly yellow pectoral fins, which is an added bonus. But she does have this strange tail where the orange coloration has become split, and I'm not too sure if I like that or not. I might just see whether or not that's something that gets passed into the next generation, and if so, I might start screening them out from there. Picking the best of the males, on the other hand, has proved far more challenging as there is much less variation between them. Some of them, though, are showing nice white in their tail tips, and this is a feature I've decided I quite like. And so any males going into the breeding pool will need to have this at least a little bit on both the bottom and top lobes of their tails. Of these males as well, and there's 5 in the group, there are 3 who stand out who are very much shinier than the others, and they seem to show quite a strong pearlescence that's purple, which is something I really appreciate. None of them, though, are showing any good coloration in the dorsal fin, which is a shame, and I'm hoping the next generation they can maybe pick that up from one of the good females, and that'll translate into the males as well. Who knows, maybe that's a possibility. We'll find out what fate has in the future, I suppose. But I am satisfied that this is now the first generation breeding group. I have got 3 females that I like in here. All of them show some coloration in the dorsal fin. That one particularly good female is obviously in here. I've got the rather shapely one in here. And lastly, I've just got another female in here who seemed to sit neatly between the two. She's kind of a jack of all trades, kind of a good shape, kind of good pearlescence, kind of good coloration in the fins. And of the males, who are so much more difficult to choose between, I actually settled on how much white have you got in your fins as well. Because I like those white tips on the tails, and some of them even show tiniest fractional bits of white in their pectoral fins as well. So why not? Let's see if that comes through in the next generation. I'll breed these guys up in the tried and tested way of putting a spawning mop in there and as soon as it's full of eggs taking it out. There is a tiny chance it might get a few celestial pearl danios thrown in, and it might get a few tiger barbs thrown in as well, but meh, that's pretty unlikely considering they're in much smaller numbers and the danios tend to be pretty egg heavy. Either way though, it's going to be interesting to see what the next generation looks like. Anywho though, I hope you've enjoyed this little video all about breeding a new line of pearl danios. Happy fish keeping everyone, and I'll see you again soon. Bye bye!